Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live session. Today we're really excited to have two special guests here, two of our current MD students, and our topic of discussion for today is our interviews. So we're going to give you a bit of information around the interview format and how to prepare for it. But first, I will introduce myself. My name is Jessie Metcalf, and I'm the Associate Registrar for Enrollment Management here in Undergraduate Medical Education. And with me today I have...
So I'm Joseph. I'm a second year medical student, and to tell you a little bit more about myself, before medical school I went to McGill and studied neuroscience.
And I'm Isra, and I'm also a second year medical student, and I went to the University of Guelph for my undergrad, and I studied biomedical sciences.
Great, so we're going to start off by just a little bit of information around how the interviews work. And then we'll get into some prepared questions that we have, some of our most common questions that we get via email and phone calls to help prepare for interview. And then we'll open it up and take some live questions from you as well. So we're excited and hope that you have some questions for us today. To start off, this year we'll give you a sense of when our interviews are happening. So our interview dates for this current year for the MD interviews are February 8th, February 29th, March 1st, March 8th, March 28th, and 29th. So we have 6 interview dates. For our MD PhD interviews, we're offering those interviews on February 9th and March 7th. Today we're really going to focus our conversation around preparing for the MD interview, not so much the MD PhD interviews. But if you would like a bit more information about that, we did an MD PhD interview tips Facebook Live in our last admission cycle. You'll find that in our video section on Facebook, but also on our YouTube page. So you can certainly go back and watch that. There's some really good, relevant, up-to-date information there as well for you. And in terms of the focus of this session, we're going to talk specifically about our modified personal interview format, give you a bit of detail around that, and also just to let you know where we're at in the interview process. Invitations have started to go out, so for our first interview date on February 8th, the invites have been sent. But as you know, with our admissions, we do interview invitations on a rolling basis as file reviews are completed. So we will be continuing to send out invites for our remaining interview dates as we get closer to those dates. We usually try to give at least 2 weeks notice prior to the interview date, but earlier if possible as well. So if you haven't heard yet, rest assured more invites will be going out very soon. So let's get into the questions and open it up to our students. So the first question I have is, can you briefly describe the MPI, Modified Personal Interview format, and what should applicants expect from it?
Sure. So the interview style at U of T, it's called an MPI, and there's 4 stations. Each station is based on a certain theme, and they'll ask you a question and you'll have 12 minutes to answer. And it's kind of a conversation. They really work really hard to make you feel comfortable at U of T, so basically be yourself, and that's how the interview goes.
Great. Anything to add to that?
No, it's pretty much exactly that. It's very conversational, sort of like casual, and that you get to really connect with the interviewer. So it's really a good experience to make yourself feel at home.
Great. So I'm going to ask you guys a more personal question. How did each of you prepare for your interviews?
So luckily I had a group of friends that also had MD interviews, so we would meet weekly, and I thought that it really was super helpful to practice with other people because, you never really know how you're coming off, so it's good to get feedback from others. So the number 1 tip I would have is to have other people at practice with you, and they don't have to be pre-med students or med students. They can just be even your family members to give you tips. And then on my own time, because I couldn't practice with people all the time, I actually had a Google Doc that I opened with different interview questions, and whenever I got the chance, I would basically answer them on my own.
Yeah, just like Isra, a lot of practice with friends who are also going through the whole MD application process, and then a lot of sort of just informal practice with family members getting really good at answering sort of the questions that you might expect to come up on an interview. And it didn't have to be like a formal practice session. It would just be sort of questions my parents asked me over dinner and trying to think out a thoughtful and well-spoken and well-reasoned response. And like Isra, I also had a Word document where I answered questions, not so much interview questions I was expecting, as much as sort of reflecting and thinking of personal examples to questions that might come up about personal experiences.
Great. So great tips from both of you, I think, in terms of how to prepare. Can you think of any specific materials outside of the practice that you tried to review to help you get into the interview mindset and help you prepare for some of the questions that might be asked?
I think it's really great to stay up to date with the news. So I always looked through the news in the morning and read some of the articles, especially in the health section. So I think in a lot of MD interviews, new kind of current topics come up and they're areas of discussion. So try to keep up to date with that. I read Doing Right. It's pretty famous amongst pre-meds, and it just goes over some ethics. So that also sets your mind to it. And I really actually like to listen to podcasts. There's a lot of great podcasts. One done by Brian Goldman, which is a physician in Toronto. It's called White Coat Black Art, and he talks a lot about different health topics, which gave me a lot of insight. So that's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a lot of similar things. I read a lot of news, and so whenever I came across an article that was relevant, sort of current and health related online, I would save it so that if before an interview I could come back to it and reread the article, so I had a little more information about what was going on. I also sort of like Googled free, even just job interview, like free medical school interview questions for examples, and just went through the list, found any questions that seemed like good questions that would probably have a chance at being asked, and rehearsed what my answer to them would be, and jotted it down in a Google Doc.
There's a lot of career centers at universities that offer like interview prep packages with like questions, or you can go into your career center and practice as well, which is always helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually a really important tip. I know here at the University of Toronto, our Career Center works really hard to help prepare current U of T students who are coming through the interview process for professional programs such as medical school, and they'll set up mock MMIs and mock MPIs here as well. So definitely a great resource to take advantage of at your home institution. Okay, so outside of the actual interviews themselves, what can applicants expect from our interview days?
A lot of interaction with current MD students. There'll be a bunch of volunteers from our class, from the first year class. They are mingling, helping put everyone at ease. There'll also be some snacks in the morning before your interview. There'll be an admissions video that we put together this year and that all the schools put together each year. What else?
Yeah, so basically to take you through the day, you'll come in, you'll grab a name tag, and then we'll present to you, give you an idea of what U of T is all about. We're really excited to do that. All the current medical students are super excited to welcome you. And so we'll give you an overview, we'll show you our admissions video, and then tell you a little bit about how the interview will go, and then you'll go off to your interview, and at some point during the day, either before your interview or after, you'll also get a chance to take a short tour around the nearby hospitals as well as our campus. And then I think after there's also financial talk and to talk a little bit about the different academies. So if you haven't heard of that, I'm sure you'll hear lots about it on your interview day, and there'll be students from each academy to kind of speak of their own experiences.
Yeah, so one thing that we're really conscious of is just really representing the broad array of students that are here at U of T and sharing insight into our two campuses, our Mississauga campus and our St. George campus, and as well the 4 academies we have across our program. So you will have lots of chance to ask questions, and really you'll be with students throughout the whole day. So even when you're going through your interviews, students will be accompanying you to your interview locations and acting as sort of hall monitors during the process, so to keep you at ease while you're waiting in between your interview stations. So I think students are a really integral part of this day, and you're going to have lots of chance for interaction and to ask questions there. So what about, we talked a little bit about the campuses, but what are some of the ways that students can learn more about the 2 campuses on that day? Is there anything specific that is done for the Mississauga campus?
So there's a sort of like a Weebly website that's uoftmedadmissions.com. It has a link to information about the Mississauga campus. It has a video tour, so you can see what the Mississauga campus looks like. And then there's also, I believe, there'll be blog posts coming out later in the spring detailing what each campus is like, what all 4 of the academies are like.
Yeah, so you'll get a chance to see that tour, and there'll be people from the Mississauga campus to really speak of their own experiences there and how much they love it there. So you'll be given the chance to speak with them and ask them any questions that you have, and then later on, I believe there's an opportunity to actually take a tour, I think after the offers come out.
Yeah, so we will definitely be sharing additional information post-interview around the campuses as well, and we do provide some in-person tour options, and as well we're going to try to do a couple of Facebook Lives out on the Mississauga campus this spring, just to give students a little bit more insight if you're not able to travel and take the tour in person. But the video and the resources of having students there to talk to, I think is really going to benefit you on your interview day and learning a lot more about the campuses. Okay, so a bit of a practical question. What should I wear to my interview?
I think just be professional, but even more importantly, you want to feel confident in what you're wearing, and you want to feel really comfortable. So as long as it's professional, there's no dress code per se, except it's really up to you. I know I really didn't want to wear a blazer on the day of my interview, and so I wore a nice professional blouse, and I felt really good about it, and I think that was really key in keeping me calm and collected, and so that I could perform well. So there's no dress code, just be professional.
Yeah, just put it on at least once, probably only once before the interview, so you know it's comfortable, you know it's clean, you know it fits well, so there isn't anything that is in your head sort of distracting you as you go about the interview day.
Great. Just a thought that came into my mind. We didn't have this down as a prepared question, but if you're traveling for interviews, do you have any sort of tips around, if you're interviewing in a new city or location like that, any tips about how to kind of plan your travel and ensure that you're going to feel comfortable when you arrive?
I would suggest definitely come a day or 2 before your interview. You definitely don't want to be stressed out trying to get to your interview the day of. So try to get there a day or 2 before, and it's really nice to be able to explore a new city that you're not familiar with. It gets you comfortable. I mean, if you choose to go to that school, if you choose to come to Toronto and it's a completely new city, a really key part of the decision could be the city itself, and Toronto is absolutely amazing, and there's so much to do, and it could really act as a good de-stressor before your interview. So I would suggest coming a day before, exploring the city and what it has to offer, and we'll also be running coffee houses the Friday before the interview weekends. So if you happen to come the day before the interview, you can come out to our medical student lounge here on campus, and you'll get the chance to meet current medical students, ask them questions as well, mingle, play board games, and it'll be a fun time.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is day of your interview, give yourself a good time cushion to get to the interview location, whether you're taking the subway, a cab, or getting a lift, or driving yourself and parking. Toronto's traffic downtown can be a little unpredictable, the TTC can be a little unpredictable. You don't want to find yourself with no time and then something comes up and it stresses you out right before, so just give yourself a bit of a cushion And then if you show up early, there'll be people to mingle with, current medical students to talk to. So it's totally good to show up early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember the interviews are happening at the Missioner Institute. I drove by it the day before so that I just knew what it looked like, what to expect, so that I wasn't stressing out trying to find it the day before.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Another piece of information I've heard in the past too is if you are flying in from another city, you might want to think about packing your interview outfit in your carry-on luggage. So I know not a lot of people check luggage if they're just coming for a few days, but thinking about really essential items that you'll need and making sure that those are in your carry-on so there's no chance of having, missing luggage at the last minute or other stressors like that to add to the interview experience. So something else maybe to keep in mind. Weather, of course, interviews happen between February and March, and so weather can always be a factor. Again, leaving yourself lots of time. We will provide applicants with an emergency call number for the day of your interview, so if anything does happen and you're delayed for some reason or you have a medical issue and you can no longer make it at the last minute, you do have a way of getting in touch with us. But to try to avoid that stress, just give yourself a lot of time and pay attention to what the weather forecast is calling for as well. Okay, a couple more questions and then we'll see if we get any from the live audience as well. But how did you find your actual interview experience? So all the prep and stuff aside, after you sit where you sit now in second year as a medical student and you reflect back, what was the experience like for you? What were some of your favorite parts of that interview day here at U of T?
I really enjoyed it. I can remember the interview day pretty vividly. I think almost everyone can. The interview, it's stressful, obviously, and a little nerve-wracking. But once you show up and you meet some of the current medical students, you listen to the presentation that they give, you watch the video, you're surrounded by current medical students and other interviewees. It really helps you sort of stay calm and grounded. And then the interview process itself was very nice because the MPI gives you a longer amount of time with each interviewer. It actually really feels like they're trying to get to know you beyond just the interview question and who you are as an applicant. And so, yeah, you feel really comfortable. You feel really you feel like you can really easily be yourself. Yeah.
I would echo the same thing as Joey. I felt so comfortable at U of T. Everyone is so lovely and welcoming and nice and really there to make you feel comfortable. And that really comes through. And as a really nervous pre-medical student waiting for an interview, it's a big moment. And I'll never forget it. But I remember feeling actually very calm before going into that first room. And I think I largely attribute that to the people that were there that made us feel also comfortable. And I remember the video they showed was amazing, and that was really fun to watch. And I caught myself not really thinking about the interview and the stress of it. So that little things like that really helped. And then the actual interview itself, the interviewers are so nice. I always thought that interviewers are there to kind of catch you slip or try to be really hard and stern, but they actually smile and they're really nice. And I think that took me by surprise, actually. And they were really trying to get to know you and really bring out the best in you. And so I think that'll come through.
Great. I don't think we shared a lot of detail around who our interviewers are, but just some information for you when you're planning and who you might meet as your interviewers. Again, you'll have 4 stations. We recruit a whole variety of interviewers, so lots of physicians and faculty members here in the Faculty of Medicine at U of T from across the various hospitals around the Greater Toronto area. We also have residents and fellows that are part of our interview process. We have 4th-year medical students that are part of that process. We also have community members, so those that are not engaged specifically in medicine, but that might be working in healthcare, in education, and other professional fields as well. So it's a pretty broad range of perspectives that are included in the interview process. If you are an ISAP or a BSAP applicant, you can also be assured that part of our commitment to be more culturally inclusive in these processes is that your interviewers will also be representative of the Black or Indigenous community. So that's something that we incorporate into those interview circuits as well. So yeah, so that gives you a sense of who might be interviewing you. We also encourage you as an applicant to ask questions, right? So the interviews are 12 minutes, not that long, but usually there is a bit of time for you to ask questions at the end or during the process to learn a little bit more about U of T as well. So it's not just one-sided in us learning about you. At the end of the day, it's a choice for you as well in terms of where you want to end up studying. So I don't see any live questions related specifically to interview. If you have a question that's related to an admission requirements or subjects, we will answer those through the Facebook post after this video is done. But if anyone has any specific questions around interview, now is the time to ask. We have a few more minutes left. While I wait to see if questions come in, a few reminders, I guess, from our team that I can share with you. So I spoke with our admissions officer this morning and we talked a little bit about some of the reminders, just administrative reminders that we have for you. So if you get an interview invitation from us, you'll be asked to go into a form to select yes or no if you can attend your interview date that's been assigned to you. Now, if you have a conflict with the date that has been assigned, you should select no on that form. And then at the bottom of the form, there's a comment section that tells us where you could basically indicate what the conflict is and why you can't attend that date. And we do our best to reschedule interviews for applicants. We're pretty lucky at U of T, we have 6 interview dates, so we can be fairly accommodating. We also recognize that, there's 6 medical schools in Ontario alone, and we often overlap with our interviews. There's only so many weekends at this time of year that we can schedule them. So if you have a conflict with another medical school interview, for instance, or with something to do with your studies or something along those lines, let us know on that form. Select no, let us know, and then we will follow up within a few days to reassign an interview date to you. So don't worry about that. Another little tip is do not worry about missing your interview invitation. Sometimes we have students that are really worried it's going to go into their junk mail or get filtered away. Be sure to set your junk mail filters, okay? So that's something you should be doing in advance. All of these notifications come from md.applicants@utoronto.ca, so be on the lookout for that email address. But we will call any candidate that doesn't reply. So if we see that we didn't get a yes or a no from someone, our admissions officer will give you a call and make sure that you got the invite and that you have the information, you have a chance to respond. If you have any concerns with accessibility, religious accommodations, anything along those lines, also let us know by email. We're happy to, make changes or accommodate you in whatever requests you have. So be aware of those things. I think a couple of questions have come in, so I want to get to those. The first being, you mentioned different themes for each station. Can you elaborate on those?
I think a great thing to look at to kind of think about themes is the CanMeds roles. If you haven't taken a look at those, look up CanMeds roles. Almost all of the MD interview questions at all schools revolve around those because those are kind of the qualities that describe future physicians. So I think that if you look at the CanMeds rules, you can deduce what kind of themes will come out of the stations. And also the U of T clusters, which are right on the website. There's 4 U of T clusters, and they are pretty related to the CanMeds rules as well. They just kind of group them. So take a look at the clusters and the CanMeds rules, I would say.
Yeah, exactly what Isra said.
Yeah, good advice there. Another question is, what times do interviews start on the day? So essentially, we have 2 blocks for interviews. We do morning and afternoon. There is one day, March 8th, where we're only doing a morning block, so that's a half day. But other than that, they're offered in 2 blocks on each day. So if you're invited for the morning interviews, we usually ask you to arrive around 7:30, and everyone is registered and checked in by 8 o'clock for our opening presentation that will be led by these 2 students here, along with our student volunteers. And then the morning session ends around 1 o'clock. So That'll include again your opening session, your actual interview circuit, tours, a post-interview chat about finance and campuses and academies and so on. So it's all done around 1 o'clock, and then likewise, if you come in the afternoon block, you're asked to arrive around 12:30 for like a 1 o'clock start, and it usually ends about 5:30 or so. So basically, it's just the same thing repeated in the afternoon. When you're invited to interview, you'll be given the interview date, and then we'll send you the confirmation and reminder email with the specific times and all the details on where to arrive, what time, how long you can plan to be there, and so on. They are, half days, but they're fairly long half days. They do start early and end pretty late. So we do have snacks, coffee, tea, water available throughout the entire time. So you can, rehydrate and fuel yourself to get through the day. I think we have another question here. When is the last date to expect an interview invitation? So we, again, do our invites on a rolling basis. So we're continuing to send invites all the way really up until about 2 weeks prior to our last interview date. So our last interview date this year is the weekend of March 28th and 29th. However, we always hold a small number of candidates right up until the end because there are chances that we have someone that backs out or is no longer able to attend like 3 or 4 days prior to the interview, and we want to fill all the spots if we can. So there's a very small chance you might get a more of a last minute invitation, and then you can choose whether or not you're still interested in attending, but for the most part, the invites will all have gone out by around mid-March for it to fill all the dates. Yeah. Okay, one more tip from me, and then I think I'll put it over to any final tips from you guys unless we get more questions. Another piece of information we ask for as part of interviews is for you to send a photo. The reason to do that is that we do basically put together a little photo package for our interviewers, and it helps them when they're seeing multiple interviewees per day to really remember you and reflect on their interview with you when they're assessing your interview performance. So when you're sending that photo in, it should be a headshot. It should be clear. It should be recognizable that it's you. So not something maybe from 10 years ago if you've changed your hair or your look a lot or things like that. Some students will get a passport photo done for that purpose. You can smile in it though. Please don't feel like you have to be really serious. It doesn't have to be a passport photo as long as it's a clear headshot. That's something that we require. And once you submit the photo to us, we won't contact you to confirm anything unless there's an issue with it or we didn't receive it, and then we'll let you know and we'll follow up. I think we got another question here. Are interview regrets and invitations sent together, or are interview regrets sent last? Okay, that's a great question too. So our regrets or our refusal emails go out in waves as well. So we do send some out prior to all the interview invitations going out according to when our file reviews are complete. So there will be some refusal emails going out over the next couple months as well. And then again, we'll keep sort of a small group up until the very end. And if you don't get an interview invite closer to the end, then you would get that decision right around the same time as the last interview weekend. So that tends to be a smaller group. We do try to let others know as soon as we have the file review information ready. More questions? Great. Okay, if I have not yet received a rejection, does that mean my application passed the initial review and is now under a complete file review? Again, rolling basis, so we haven't sent out very many of our refusals yet, so there are still more to come, but over the next couple months, those will go out alongside the interview invitations. If you haven't heard yet, you can kind of consider that you're still in the mix, but we will be sending more of those decisions out as they come. Question around sort of weighting. Are you able to give a breakdown of the weight given to each component, GPA, essays, etc., of the application in offering an invite? So we don't actually release our scoring system for the file review component. What we do let students know is that everything is important. So we take into consideration, MCAT is really just a checkbox. It's a flag or a threshold that we use. We look at GPA on a competitive scale, And then we assign assessments for the essay components, the autobiographical sketch, and the references as well. So at the end, if your file review score comes up close to the top 600 or so, we interview about 640 candidates, quite a lot, you'll be invited to interview. Should you come to interview, your final decision is going to be based 50% on your file review score, 50% on interview. So that's really the only sort of breakdown that we release, but I hope that's helpful in just determining how the process moves forward. And I think that's it. Before we close it off though, any final tips or words of encouragement from you guys when students are thinking about preparing for their interviews?
I think just remember you worked so hard to get here and you're very deserving of it. So just be yourself during the interview as much as you can. I know the nerves can get in the way sometimes, but just be yourself and I'm sure it'll go great, and we're all very excited to meet you at U of T.
Yeah, I would echo what Israel said. Just look forward to the interview day. It's a big, scary day leading up to it, but the day of, I think, can be really enjoyable. And I think remembering all the hard work that you've put in to get there can really let you be yourself better. And my only piece of advice is just take a deep breath, lets you calm down a little, and look forward to the day.
Great, so we hope to see you at one of our interview days this year. And if you have additional questions following this video, as always, feel free to message us through Facebook, contact the admissions office, and we'll be happy to respond. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.